Welcome to the TCA radio show with Clint Hackney. I'm Brian Hadley, your host. Clint Hackney first served in the Texas legislature as a Texas representative for District 84 back in 1981. Clint was a Texas rep for Harris County and Houston for 4 Texas legislative sessions: the 67th, 68th, 69th, and 70th legislative sessions here in Austin. Clint got out of the Texas legislature after the 70th session, which sine died in 1989. He's originally from Lufkin, was a member of the Corps of Cadets at Texas A&M, and while serving in the Texas legislature, he helped rewrite the Texas Election Code in 1985 and played a major role in creating the Texas Department of Commerce and establishing the state's Rainy Day Fund. He's been on the radio a bunch, too, as the author of Tales of American Political History, found on radio stations nationwide. He's also a good and dear friend of the late Charlie Wilson, and so Clint's seen it. And we're doing this show to cover Texas interests and politics with a Texas political insider who knows his stuff and his Texas history. We'll also do that on the show, pretty much anything Texan or American history that'll interest our Texas Construction Association members and even some folks outside our neighborhood. And that's good for everyone. Clint, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Well, Brian, I appreciate it. Some of those things you said, they're good memories. But over time, there's some bad entries. I don't know how to put it. I'm not going to hurt anybody, but
yeah. Probably some political history and apolitical history. That's what we want to kick things off first here on the show today. Our first TCA radio with Clint Hackney. It was the year 1983, folks, and the rumble at the Rotunda occurred. Clint, give us some background about the rumble at the Rotunda. Why State Senator Craig Washington was so ticked off that morning in 1983.
Well, we he and I were good friends, and both serving from Houston, and we met along with the governor. It was Governor Mark White. We had just finished. The three of us had breakfast, but not together, and we ended up entering the Capitol that morning. And I think you and I have talked before about the lack of compromise.
Right.
And it's it doesn't matter if it's in Washington or the Texas Capitol or where, and I think you might go along with me that it's deteriorating to the point where there's just no compromise anymore.
Right.
And the deal is
getting to the point where we rarely talk anymore, even.
Yeah, you're right, and I got to say though, it wasn't. There is going to be, I think, just because of human nature, there's going to be some arguments,
right? And
we got to try to keep it as debates and arguments. However, myself,
but this was a full blown out fisticuff.
I did get in a mess that day. It wasn't unusual for 3 cars to drop off folks, around 9 a.m. The breakfast. Governor Mark White and State Senator Craig Washington and myself. We were all 3 from Houston. We all got there at the front door. Everything was normal until suddenly.
And we're talking here. You were all 3 Democrats, right?
Yeah, we were all good friends, Democrats, and it just turned into sort of a mess.
You shake hands and then you walk toward the entrance, and then all hell broke loose. What happened?
Well, as soon as we went in, we it was sort of funny, but I don't want to make fun of anybody. Yeah. When we all stepped in there in the door, Governor White took off to his. He ran really, like a bees running for chasing the honey. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But I knew what was happening right off, because Senator Washington just started yelling at me, and he pointing his finger at my face, and it was about some legislation that affected the airports in Houston, and he had been given incorrect information about me being against it all, and
he's reading the paper, and then he comes up to you, and he starts like bopping your nose.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the part. You can forget the issues once you get somebody yelling at you, screaming at you in your ears, and on an issue, it's a little different. And
so he's upset about something regarding legislation regarding Houston airports, and
right, and he had the wrong information, and frankly, that I didn't care. Once this was a 6 foot tall man, and I'm about 5 feet 2 inches. So, and that hadn't, that's just the way I'm built, So
it's like Conor McGregor going against, a big Jerry Cooney or something.
I was down to where I was having to deal with a 6 foot angry man, and I, instead of being scared, I yelled back and hit him, and I punched him in the nose, and his reaction was to pick me up and throw me on the tourist bureau stand. That I had on a nice coat and tie and everything, but that's the way it happened.
Wow.
And that's when I guess I call him my hero. State Senator Mark Stiles saw, he's from Beaumont, and still around, but he saw what was going on and wrestled the senator to the tile, and he got him on a leg lock to save me.
So he gets him on a leg lock. He's got like a kabuki against the turnbuckle. He's not doing the DDT on him, but he's got him in a. You're telling he's got a state senator in a leg lock.
Yeah, that's right. And I was still over there at the in my suit at the bureau.
and so this is going on. Are there tourists around? Were DPS around? Did they see it? There are people running towards you.
Nobody nobody came but the three of us, and there were, and the governor, of course, was he was sending people, he was calling people, but it ended kind of quick, like most battles do, and it's not that bad these days. When I started out talking about the just human nature, and
so Clint, the crux point you want to mention to listeners is we got to have compromise, and things today may not be as bad as we think. When you talk about a real fisticuff in the foyer of the state capitol, we got to have compromise, right?
Right, that's correct.
What happened with the issue? I mean, so what do you do? You go back to your office, and Washington goes back to. I mean, do you call each other 10 minutes later on the phone? Does he apologize? Do you apologize? What went on that day?
Well, I went straight to my office, and the senator went to the Senate floor, and we were talking with each other over other thing, about an hour, 2 hours later.
So it kind of just all went by the wayside, and it was all okay after 2 hours.
Yes, sir. What he was trying to get across to me, he just came over from the Senate to the floor of the House to talk to me, and we had sort of compromise, and he understood that he and I really, in the end, were going to end up getting the same thing with a different piece of legislation.
That's great. So, and it affected you both, being from Houston, because you're talking about a macroeconomic issue, the Houston airport. Did he think you were stabbing him in the back some way? That he would get so angry? Or someone gave him just really, really bad or false information? Or?
Well, I think what happens is he had me. He was in charge of this legislation,
right?
And he had me down as an aye, yes.
Gotcha.
And it's, I think it took him by surprise that morning, and
he learned you were a no, possibly.
Right.
I'll be darned. So he gets upset about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I say.
And then y'all compromised and had a nice talk, gentlemanly discussion on the floor afterward.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so, Clint, great story. That's an incredible story. What is your recommendation for people in the political process right now? We talk Texas politics or we talk national politics, and people say, man, it's never been as bad as it is now. And it is pretty dang bad. The acrimony toward one another, no matter what side of the aisle. What do you hope happens? It seems like, I always give the example lately, it's the Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan example. They didn't like each other politically. They disagreed big time and deep, but they were always gentlemen toward one another.
Well, it's easier. It's easier to do in a statewide situation because you have just fewer people elected. But I think it ought to start from Washington. It's more difficult to get the folks in Washington into compromise. Now, and I've seen that. I don't have a book on it, but
yeah, well,
I just think it's got to start. If we're gonna stop calling ourselves the North and the South, and we got to get the language down first. And
got to bring the temperature way down.
And that Reagan, that was great.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Clint, your early entrance into politics was largely due to a late, great, dear friend of yours, Charlie Wilson. Of course, all of America is familiar with Charlie Wilson from the Tom Hanks film, Charlie Wilson's War. Talk about that for the next show, just a brief synopsis, 20 or 30 seconds. What will we talk about on the next TCA radio? He was a great friend of yours.
Yeah, he was, and it is interesting how people decide that they want to be involved or running for office or whatever. There's so many ways you can bump into that. Maybe a teacher or maybe a nature. Not a nature, but. Somebody that
helps nature and nurture you into the business of politics, maybe.
Yeah, and Charlie Wilson was a friend of mine, and I mowed his yard out there until I got my driver's license.
Oh man!
He lived about 5-6 houses down from me when I was growing up.
In Lufkin?
Yep. And I didn't know it, but at the time I'm out there mowing his yard, and he's a state senator, and I didn't even know about that. But I did end up going to work for him. He was the manager of the lumber yard in Diboll, Texas, and he called me, and I was in high school about this time, and he just asked me. He had called my dad first, so I wouldn't be mad if the answer was no. But Charlie invited me to work on the weekends at the lumber yard. And
that's awesome.
I didn't really. I did know that he was in the state senate by that time.
Yeah.
But I had no idea of the depth of what his politics were, and anyway, I could talk a long time about Charlie and myself.
We'll do that on the next show. That'll be a great show. Yeah. Today's talk on TCA Radio, I guess, Clint, wouldn't you agree? It's the art of compromise, and then for the next show, your relationship with Charlie Wilson and your entrance into Texas politics and the State House and why it's so important to serve. This has been the TCA Radio Show with Clint Hackney and Brian Hadley. The date is January 10th, 2024. We'll see you next week, and you can find all of our TCA radios at texcon.org and click on the TCA radio icon at texcon.org.